Before we jump into the episode, I just wanted to give a quick status update. On Sunday night, we found out that, as we feared might eventually happen, new episodes of Digimon Adventure: 2020 have been delayed indefinitely because of COVID-19, and episode 3 will be the last episode for the time being. No one knows how long this will last, and Digimon is far from the only show hit by these delays. I'll include a link in the show notes to articles rounding up COVID-19 related anime delays and status updates. There's some hope that general anime production might be able to resume to a degree under quarantine protocols, since lots of key animators already work from home, but there's also tons of people in the anime production process who aren't used to working from home and might never be able to adjust to working from home. Most notably voice actors, since the Japanese voiceover process almost always involves all the actors in the scene recording in a studio as a group. All that is to say, brace yourselves for the possibility that this delay is very long. I plan to resume the podcast whenever the show picks back up, but we don't have any concrete plans until then. We did just find out that the Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna film is getting an English Blu-ray release in early July, so maybe we'll be able to pull together a Podagist reunion episode with a full crew to cover that in July, assuming it doesn't also get delayed. Without further ado, let's get to the discussion of Digimon Adventure Episode 3. Just note that we record this episode Sunday morning before any news about the hiatus, so we were blissfully unaware back then. Anyway, please enjoy the episode and stay safe out there.
We're not your daddy's Digimon, you know? We're different.
Welcome to Podagist, your critically nostalgic, analytical tour through the Digimon anime. I'm your host, Jeff Ruberg. This week we're discussing Digimon Adventure 2020, Episode 3, Enter the Digital World. And this week we have special guest Chris/Royalty from Weekly Manga Recap and Dice Funk. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, happy to have you on. You know, Weekly Manga Recap is one of my favorite podcasts out there, and I really love listening to you talk about manga. However, I'm very behind on all the manga I read, so I haven't listened to you in a while. So I'm glad to have you on to talk about Digimon instead.
It's okay. We talk about mostly nonsense on there. Here, we're going to have a much more thorough discussion.
All right, so Chris, what's your history of Digimon? Which anime seasons have you seen? Did you watch it dubbed or subbed?
I watched it dubbed, and that will probably color a lot of my stuff going forward. So I know that there are some people who refer to characters by different names. I'm going to refer to them as like Matt and Izzy and Joe. I know that some people refer to them different names, just how I've colloquially come to know them as. But I started with Adventure, like most kids my age. It was, Saturday morning cartoon, or in a lot of cases, I think I actually started watching it after school because it used to have like an hour run on Fox Kids. So I watched it there. I watched Adventure 2 to just about the point where they started doing DNA Digivolves. At that point, I was kind of like in high school, so I just didn't watch like Saturday morning cartoons nearly as much. Didn't watch any of Tamers really, shamefully, because I saw the card thing in the first episode, and I was like, I played that card game. It's not that good. You're not going to try to suck me into this again, which is a shame because I've heard it's one of the most emotionally powerful and thematically resonant seasons. But I was just like, the card game? No, you're not going to trick me into this. And then I came back and I watched a lot of Frontier because it used to air on Jetix, I think. It was like a Disney cartoon exclusive channel, essentially. And I watched a lot of stuff on there.
And do you have any experience with the like non-anime stuff like the games or trading card game? And it sounds like you had some experience with it enough to be turned off from Tamers.
I mean, I definitely bought a couple packs of the card game. Like almost everyone I knew, some people bought it. Everyone I knew who ever collected Pokemon cards never played it. I never played Pokemon, like the trading card game, until the video game on the Game Boy Advance came out, which is an absolute classic. Yeah. Play it if you haven't. And somehow even less played the Digimon card game. Like, I don't think any of us functionally knew how the game was played. We just collected it. There's some real treasures to it. It's the only way I recognized that Hercules Kabuterimon existed, and I kept waiting for the anime to get to Hercules Kabuterimon. I was like, Kabuterimon's gonna mega evolve. It's gonna be crazy. This is gonna be awesome. And it never happened. But I never really engaged too much with that. And I tried to engage with the video games, but the one I tried to engage with the most refused to work. I got like a copy from Blockbuster, and it would freeze on the first fight every single time. I owned the strategy guide for the game, never played it, basically. It was a very sad life.
Well, it sounds like your history of Digimon is full of broken promises and things just not working, which is pretty representative of the Digimon experience, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So of the seasons you've seen, which would you consider your favorite at this point, looking back on it?
I definitely like Adventure the most of all of them. And within Adventure, my heart wants to say I like the Dark Spiral saga the most. But my mind tells me my Otismon's arc is by far the best part of Adventure 1. But I still enjoy both of those like on a same level. I just recognize one has actual better quality than the other. One doesn't have 11 episodes of Puppetmon and only 2 of Messengermon. the objective best character in the Dark Masters. It's ridiculous, but whatever. I'll save that rant for another podcast.
Yeah, save that rant for your Machine Jamon Justice podcast.
Yeah, coming soon to iTunes.
So do you have a favorite Digimon, a favorite adventure character?
My favorite Digimon is Gabumon because he was a cool blue wolf, and I like that a lot. Although now that I've gotten older, I kind of like Ogremon a lot, just because I'm into that kind of design. And as a kid, I thought Matt was the best because he is the cool lone wolf kid who does everything. And then as I got older, I'm like, oh no, I'm Joe because I'm staring at like a tube of toothpaste to buy, and I'm like, it says whitening protection, but does it do anything for my gums? I'm not sure if this is the right one for me. I'll make this decision tomorrow. Essentially, like I'm far too much like him, where I'm constantly anxious and worried about things. So I was like, no, I'm a Joe. I'm not the lone wolf at all.
I really appreciate how much, like, I feel like everyone has come around. I feel like as a kid, Joe and Mimi were the ones that, like, everyone shat on. Everyone's like,
Yeah.
those are the worst. They're terrible. Like, they're annoying. And it's like everyone, now it's like everyone loves Joe. Everyone loves Mimi. Like, Mimi's the queen of the season. Joe's who everyone reluctantly is. And
Well, it's that idea too, where you're like, as a kid, you're like, Joe's this wet blanket. He never wants to
yeah.
do anything. He never wants to just jump into this river full of monsters. And you're like, yeah. When you get older, you're like, of course he would. It's full of monsters. Where are we? I want my parents. I'm this 13-year-old that's responsible for a group of 12-year-olds, basically. Like this is insanity.
So yeah, we were talking before the show about Digimon Adventure Try and how you haven't seen it. And it's such a mixed bag, but there are some the worst movie of the six had some really great Joe moments. So
Oh, that's good.
I'll send you time codes to the episodes. Just watch those moments.
Just watch specifically 20 seconds or so of episodes. I wish someone had done that for me. I wish I could be warned about more media that's bad. Like I watched all of Hunters on Amazon. Nobody warned me. Nobody told me to like just stop. It doesn't it's just going to be awful.
So what are your thoughts on the new Adventure series so far?
It is a very interesting show. There's kind of two hearts and minds to this for me. On one hand, it is very different from my original Digimon, and I am not happy. And on the other hand, I'm like, it is very different from my original Digimon, and that is the right call to make. And I appreciate that. I'm one of those people that thinks we shouldn't bother doing something we've already done before unless you have something new to say or you have some new way to deliver it. And I appreciate that this isn't just a straight up remake of the original series, but it does do a couple things that I'm not super happy about. But I'm patient because maybe we'll get to that stuff eventually.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything from, before we dive into the third episode, do you have anything from the first two episodes that's like stands out as something that you're frustrated by?
I think right now my biggest frustration is with Matt. Honestly, I need to see where we kind of go, but because the story isn't about 7 kids who get sucked into this digital world and are lost and alone, I think you lose a lot of nuance in Matt because Matt was this sort of interesting character who acted like he was cool and collected and knew everything, but he was doing that because he was trying to be cool for his younger brother, essentially, someone he also didn't get to see a whole lot. And you kind of realize over the course of the show, you're like, oh, this guy's just as scared and confused as these other kids, but he's putting on this big facade to act cool. Whereas so far in Digimon 2020, he just seems like he's that cool kid. Like he doesn't really seem like he has as much of the nuance of, I'm a 12-year-old who's trying to act like I have things together. And we still could have room to explore that as the series goes along. We just haven't gotten there quite yet, at least.
Yeah, that's fair. It seems like without knowing how things are going to play out, if they're even going to be with TK or Takeru during the season, like things could be wildly different.
Yeah, I do appreciate some stuff that they're doing, although some of it's kind of contingent on the idea, and I guess this partially plays into the idea. I don't know who this series was specifically created for, if it's for new generations of kids to get into Digimon, or if it's created for the people who watched Digimon originally and are now adults, because in the second episode, there's not really enough clues to signify that the reason Matt's fighting so hard is because his brother's in Tokyo, like the whole TK connection. There's not enough. I mean, you can glean it from clues, I guess, but I mean, part of it feels kind of relying on the context that you're like, well, in the original series they were brothers, so I'm going to assume that's the truth here too as well.
Yeah, I to that point I don't know if it's who the primary audience is, and it's hard because like I'm in such a bubble of fellow adult Digimon fans that it's like it feels like it's made for us, but like maybe we're just an afterthought.
Yeah, because part of me always wonders when, I mean, obviously there was a meeting where this show was pitched and people went along with it. And in that they discussed who their target audience was, who their ultimate goal to like make this show for was. So I'm always kind of curious to be like, is this for adults? Is this for a new generation of kids? Is it to try to mix both, but who are they leaning harder towards? And my mind would say it's to the adults, but that might just be because I don't watch as much children's television anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they do it. Like in my mind, I'm like, well, they haven't learned any lessons about friendship, so obviously this is for adults. But maybe that's what kids shows are nowadays. I don't know.
Well, the only sign that I know about is that like they're definitely doing a big push to like a new reboot of the Digimon card game.
This time we're gonna play it. I guarantee it. I'm gonna open a pack and I'm gonna be like, all right, let's work this out. And then by the end of the day, it's gonna be in a drawer somewhere forgotten for the rest of time. And I'll be like, they still never did Hercules Kabuteri, Mom. What's up with that?
You know, I try and not to get my hopes up too much, especially because there hasn't been any news about if the card game's coming out in America or in English or anything. But like the Japanese version, it looks really cool. Like, I mean, I never played the original, so I have no basis.
I don't think anyone did. I don't know if the people who designed the game ever played it. I think they just put designs on the cards and they were like, well, it'll sell.
But like this new game has really cool concepts. Like it's all about like, basically hacking the opponent's firewall and stuff. Like it plays thematic. The characters have abilities that match their story arcs from the show and stuff. And it's like, this seems really thoughtful and looks really cool, and like hopefully it doesn't just fail on its head, but who knows. All right, so without further ado, let's dive into Digimon Adventure 2020 episode 3 and to the digital world.
Let's do it.
AKA 6 young lens flares go to camp for the summer, AKA yet another episode without Mimi. So quick warning about our description of our spoiler policy. So basically, fair game in this discussion is going to be everything that was in the episode on Crunchyroll. So that includes the next episode title and preview for episode 4, but does not include, there have been online, you can find basically a plot synopsis of episode 4 and episode 5 and titles for episodes 5 and 6. So we're not going to be talking about those. So Chris, what were your first impressions of this episode?
So obviously the big thing was, is it Omegamon? I always thought it was Omnimon.
Oh boy, let's dive into the dub versus sub debate. So yeah, I mean, this is just Omegamon was a Japanese name, Omnimon was the English name.
Okay.
I think they had to avoid Omegamon when they released the movie because they already had used the term Mega for the final evolution stage. So it was like, we can't have Mega and then an Omegamon. Yeah. I assume that's what the reasoning was.
Because I always thought Omnimon was such an awesome name. So Omnimon showing up was very surprising. I think more surprising to me is that we had a two-parter in episode 2 and 3, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was like, this is sort of very interesting timing to set up like a two-part fight. And I was just kind of curious to see how this executes. All of this was very strange. We're at this point where clearly we're not following Adventure so much like identically. We're at kind of right now being Code Lyoko, essentially, where it's like we got to hack into the digital world to beat these programs so things in the real world stop being dangerous. And that's great. Code Lyoko is a fantastic series, top 10 theme song of all time. But it is definitely interesting because when you've watched the original and you have so much fondness for it, you're kind of like, this is crazy. And then when an episode ends with Omnimon or Omegamon, you're like, wait, that's the movie dude who was super powerful. We needed all the power of internet, email, like friendship chains to beat him. Like we're going to this guy already. So it's curious, how is this series going to use this character? And it's an interesting way to use it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, like, when episode 2 ended and we saw that he appeared, I was hoping that by the end of episode 3 we would know more about like what the fallout of that was. But we're still kind of in the dark about that. It's kind of like who was that? We don't really know. And so it's like, I'm hoping that it's like they're fully cut off from that. That was like the world was about to end kind of thing. So like they, invoke the power of miracles or something and can't get back to that until maybe the end of the series or something, or midway through or something.
Yeah, the same way Ash saw Ho-Ho on the first episode of Pokemon. We're not going to glimpse Omnimon for quite some time again.
That's a good comparison. And that blew my mind as a kid. I was like, because I was like, oh my god, there are more than 150 Pokemon? What the? Oh my god. They're like geniuses. And now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, of course they're more than 150. Like they just threw one of them out there. Like it's not that crazy.
It always makes me laugh thinking of the episode where they meet Bill in the lighthouse and he's like, there are 150 known Pokemon in the universe. And he's including the legendary Pokemon, but not like the garbage bin trash Pokemon that like if you just hop over one continent is all over the place. He's like, nope, we don't know. We have 3 mythical birds, but a Zigzagoon, what's that? Who knows?
Yeah, I never thought it's incredibly xenophobic that they're just like, these ones in this one region of Japan, they're the only ones in the world. We don't know we haven't even gone to like Hokkaido or like any other area of Japan. Like,
just the most limited area of all of it because none of the other stuff comes over here. Just our stuff exports out basically.
Yeah, I thought this episode was like, I don't know. Like I really was like excited by the first episode, and both episodes 2 and 3 to me kind of left me like, okay, just kind of wanting more at the end. And I think it was really this one. I had two big frustrations with it. The first one was that the resolution of like how they resolve the missile. First of all, I like how it in what I remember of a war game, it's like as soon as they defeat Diaboromon, then it just like that disarms the nuke and it just like lands in the water and it's like cool, totally fine.
Yeah.
And I liked how they subverted that here where it's like they defeat Agumon. So in case you don't know, the name of the Digimon isn't mentioned in the show, but in supplementary materials they refer to him as Agumon. So which sounds like Agumon, but is spelled like algorithm.
Huh, Algoba. I was curious. I was like, this is kind of a weird thing that we don't like, and I assume that's what we're kind of going into in the future. Is now that they're in the digital world, I guess proper, we'll actually start meeting other Digimon. But I was like, it's really weird to me that this Digimon isn't named in any way. It
Yeah.
looks like no one refers to him by anything. I was really like, I was like, when are they gonna pop up the title card where somebody says, "That's Haku. Oh, come on, we have to stop him, or he's gonna digitally eat the world," or something like that.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I guess it's more realistic or naturalistic to not mention that, but like, you don't need to be that realistic. Like, just tell us, please. Like,
I can enjoy some camp. I've accepted it
yeah.
for 10 years of my life at this point with this series. We could keep going.
Yeah, it's also just weird because it's like, at least if they hadn't named him in like supplementing materials, then it could be like, what's its name? Like, what's this mysterious Digimon? But instead, it's like, oh yeah, if you like hear about Digimon news, like it's obvious. And if you haven't, then it's just like, what the hell?
Yeah, you had to win a game of Fortnite, and that revealed its name, and then it leads into the next. Then you understand the pre-scroll text.
Yeah. You're actually going to cut out Izzy's info dumps in the future and just put them in Fortnite?
Yeah, you just win a game of Fortnite, then you watch an episode of Digimon. It all makes sense then.
But yeah, so I like how as soon as they defeat Algamon, it doesn't disarm the missile, and they have to like find some other way. Because I feel like it's a bit more realistic that like they don't need like active interference to keep the missile armed or whatever. But then like the thing they find to like basically send the missile up in the air instead, it was just like, what is going? This doesn't make any sense. Like Taichi just kind of like closes his eyes and is like, we need to destroy the missile, and they just destroy digital representation of the missile, and that sends it up into the sky, and it's like, what is going on? Who this makes no sense. And like, why does Taichi think this is possible? Why is it possible? And then like even later, like Taichi refers to it as like when we blew up the missile, and then Koshiro refers to it as redirecting the missile. And I'm like, did you blow it up or did you redirect it? Like,
Yeah, I don't know if the idea was that it was timed to explode regardless of impact on top of it. So by sending
yeah,
it, I was like, because in my mind, I'm also like, they did just blow a nuke up in orbit. I feel like that's gonna have some fallout effects on us. I was like, oh, they're just gonna send it harmlessly into space where it will float forever into our gravitational pull. We'll just bring it back down into Earth, I think. But whatever, let's not worry about that. Instead, I'm like, this seems like this has also equally dangerous like effects on our world. But whatever. They blew it up. Everything the day is saved.
I also found it weird that so when I first watched the episode, I went back and got some like screenshots so I could write up his outline. And Koshiro later refers to it as like he's speculating about how when it blows up in the air, it like causes an EMP that shuts off all electronics or whatever. But then like they come back online a couple minutes later, and Koshiro's like, how did that happen? Like usually that would be off permanently, but like there's some kind of external force seems to have intervened. And at the time I was like, oh, okay, so there's something that hasn't been explained yet. But then when I went back and watched it, I was like, that was explained because like after it blows up in the sky, there's like it switches back to Omegamon. There's like this big explosion that happens, and Omegamon just like I don't know, like spreads his cape around it, and it kind of contains it. And then I thought that was supposed to be a visual representation of containing the EMP and like restoring the systems back. So I was like, it's weird that Taichi Yamato basically resolved that. And then Koshiro speculates later and is like, we don't know what did that. And it's like, but we do know what did that. We saw it. What's going on?
There's a pacing and a level of narrative kind of information provided in the first 3 episodes that make me think maybe the original plan was to do a short movie to lead into the series proper, because I don't know if the idea is now everybody seems to be going into the digital world. At least the next episode preview seems to suggest at least Sora's in there now. And then the lights also seem to kind of give some indication, but maybe in these 3 episodes, it's sort of the way Dragon Ball Super was eventually just like, this whole thing's just the Frieza movie again. So, like, this idea of like using like a movie to kind of set up more of the series, because it is kind of this strange tone where it's a lot of action, very little character development, and
yeah, like very little dialogue.
and you don't get a ton of the personality of either Matt or Ty in that big fight that they have. Like, you don't really get the idea that Ty can sometimes be a bit too brazen and foolhardy, or the idea that Matt really keeps to himself, probably to a detriment. Like they very kind of quickly they have like a vague idea that those are the personalities, and then they kind of put them aside because like, hey, a nuke's headed towards Japan. We gotta stop that. And they solve it, and there's very little interaction between them that's not shouting out a Digimon's name or something along those lines. So it's very curious. That to me sounds like a movie where you kind of go in with a pre-knowledge essentially of those
Mm.
characters and their personalities. You don't need anything more than that. And then maybe future episodes kind of develop that a bit more. At least that's my hope.
Yeah, I wonder though, because like even if it were a movie, I feel like the like extended sequence in episode 2 where it's just like fighting without any dialogue or like without any like interesting character development, I'm like that still wouldn't work in a movie.
Oh, well, you put Smash Mouth over it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, come on.
you always need to put Smash Mouth over everything.
You put Smash Mouth over it, you change All Star to Digistar, and the rest is taken care of.
But yeah, I found it weird that like in those episodes in episode 2 where it was like I found myself being like this is bad because there's so much action, there's so much battle, the time devoted to battles. But then I was like, I've seen like what like 300 episodes of Bleach, like that's not a problem. Like that can be paced well and can be exciting even if it's like all the storytelling is through battle and action.
Usually there's a contingent, like that's why I kind of noted it's very odd that we had a two-parter in episode 2 to 3, because usually our first couple episodes you try to keep them standalone. Sometimes there's like a two-parter in episode 1 to 2, like that kind of like we need it. I guess technically in a way this is almost a three-parter,
Yeah.
but usually you use those first couple episodes to develop your cast, and then when you get to the point where you're doing a bunch of big shonen battle fight scenes where there's just a lot of action, you know enough about these characters that you care about what's happening to them. And
Mm-hmm.
here seems to rely on the idea a lot that you know these characters from the previous series. Otherwise, you're going in with some pretty thin character details, because there's not a ton you could say about Ty other than the fact you're like, oh, he seems like a pretty good dude. I mean, he makes friends pretty easily. I don't know, he's sweet orange trunks. I like that. It's good. It's good short choice. You know.
I'm still getting used to the new. They're not even that different, but like the slightly tweaked designs for these characters, these kids, because it's like it's just different enough that it feels off, but not different enough that it feels different.
Mhm.
Kind of. It's like uncanny valley of like, why is Taichi wearing a different kind of shorts? Or like,
I like Taichi's shorts because it does, as I say, fits to his color identity. Like the orange crest of courage, like feels more like visually identifiable in his character design. Matt, I'm like, this is awful. This is terrible. Give him his sleeveless shirt back, which I who buys that for a child? You're going to summer camp in the mountains and he's wearing sleeveless shirts but gloves. That's ridiculous. I guess he's 12. He makes his own choices, but still, most of the other ones seem okay. Those are the two I had the strongest feelings on.
all right, so we kind of have already talked about a bunch of plot points in this episode, so I'll kind of maybe breeze through the recap. But so starting off, like Omegamon fights Algamon. There's kind of a back and forth. Omegamon seems to have the upper hand, blasts him at close range. Algamon retreats, puts down some brutes. Lots of eyeballs appear. It's very, very reminiscent of the movie with Diaboromon having like I don't know millions of Diaboromon clones surrounding them. Then Omegamon basically just dodges all the eyeball lasers. The opening theme starts to play, which this also felt like a weird. I don't think this is representative of possibly being a movie or anything, but it just felt weird because this is like a shonen staple when you're at like the end of the series and like the final battle
Yeah.
starts playing the opening and you're like maybe it's not even the current opening, maybe it's the first opening and you're just like, oh my god, this hits me in the feels. But this is just like this is the third time we've heard the opening. We're not that nostalgic for it. Why are you playing it
Yeah, I was
already?
gonna say I heard this 5 minutes ago. It's not that. I mean, come on, this isn't like a year has been built up to this. Plus, you have a far better song in the tank. It goes, "Hey Digimon, champion to the boys and girls," and just you play that anytime anything should happen.
Yeah, especially it was the beginning of the episode, so it was like we heard this 2 minutes ago. Like this
Yeah.
isn't this is weird. Yeah, and then they basically just like in the movie stab Agumon and he goes poof. But like I was saying before, the missile keeps flying. Koshiro browses 4chan to find out what to do. That was I think people pointed out that in the last episode he was also browsing 4chan, but I didn't really notice it there. It was pretty hard to miss here because he's like browsing through and people are like, oh my god, we need to stop it. Oh my god, my life's in danger. And then one person is just like doing the shruggy emoji.
Shrug. That'd probably be me. Like, it's gonna happen. What are you gonna do?
I mean, honestly, if you read about like the world ending or like a missile being thrown at Tokyo on 4chan, like, would you really trust it?
No. Well, I'm skeptical about everything. We'll get to that later, though.
Yeah, and like I was complaining about before, Taichi closes his eyes, just kind of resolves that they have to blow up the missile. Omegamon then scans for missiles or something. He has radar now all of a sudden.
I like that in idea because again I kind of mentioned that this feels a lot like Code Lyoko
Mhm.
in that they're going in stopping these monsters and that fixes things in the real world. And I kind of like the idea that the danger here was a nuclear submarine was stolen and they thematically tie it to then Omnimon using sonar to find this missile. Like I kind of like this idea that maybe they're in this digital space where they could kind of be influenced a bit by it. Like it does feel random, but thematically it ties the idea that a sub is kind of the catalyst to all of this, and that's how it's found.
Yeah. While we're talking about subs, I should raise the point that my boyfriend pointed out when we watched episode 2 and then was mad that I didn't mention on the podcast that it's not you can't fire, like they say it came from the Atlantic Ocean and that there aren't intercontinental ballistic missiles that can fly across the entire globe.
Did they say it was from the Atlantic Ocean? Why wouldn't you say the Pacific Ocean?
Yeah.
Why
I
would
feel
this
like
missile have to fly over the entirety of the United States to hit Tokyo?
I feel like maybe they wrote it as Pacific Ocean and then they like last minute fact checked to be like, oh wait, there are only like 3 submarines in the world right now and they're all in the Atlantic. Ugh, I guess let's just say Atlantic.
They fact checked it to be like there aren't nuclear submarines in the Pacific, but then we're like, yeah, so it just flies over the entirety of the United States and then it's Tokyo. Like that seems like you're creating one problem to solve a much minor problem in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. On that note, no, on that note, when it starts to fly back around, at first I was like, are they just sending it back to America? Is this going to blow up America instead? Great.
Just taking out Kansas City instead. They're like, hey, they got a Super Bowl. They all died happy. It's all okay.
That was dark. But yeah, so after Omegamon like shoots the digital representation of the missile, it turns around, flies into the sky. Internet cuts out for Tokyo, and I like this that like basically their connection to the digital world is cut short by the EMP, and they're kind of like flung out of the digital world because they just like their connection lagged out. Then Taichi wakes up in the station, starts to head home with Koshiro. Hikari acts super creepy. Like I get that they're just like playing similar beats from the original series where she just like kind of knows stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, you know what? The most outside of the actual Digimon themselves, although we haven't gotten to see Gabumon yet, the most comforting thing was like, oh, Kairi is also terrifying in this one as well. She's just this weird, creepy kid at the start of things. So I'm glad we've kept that true to the series form.
I guess when I look back, I think that she was creepy in the original series because she like was one of the Digidestined or chosen children or whatever, and we at the time weren't supposed to know that. But like she was creepy even beyond that. Like there were things she was just like, oh yeah, I know Koromon. And it was like, how do you? I guess that's kind of explained by the end, but like, well, actually, no, it's not because she was like a tiny baby and she remembered everything. And it's like, she has Ray's baby
She has
memories.
baby memories.
Oh no,
we have a precedent for this.
Oh no. Oh boy. So yeah, then like Taichi and Koshiro ride the elevator back. They keep reflecting on stuff. It's cute. I like seeing the two of them talk about things. They're a nice relationship to see built up this early on in the show.
Yeah, I actually think that's one of the cool things because of the way this is being structured. We're actually really fundamentally building this idea of an Izzy Tai relationship in that way. And I think that's supremely cool. It gives them like a real relationship that ahead of everything else, which hopefully we're going to start building. I mean, they established that Sora and Tai have like a long-standing relationship, so we don't really have to build that up so much. But once all these other characters get involved, it'll be good to have some relationships firmly established already.
Yeah. And then we see Yamato calling Takaru, and it, I guess, like firmly establishes. Before this, it was kind of unclear whether Yamato was also in the Tokyo region or if he was really far away. And this establishes that, yeah, he's at a place that looks very similar to his grandmother's place from the movie. So he's probably out in the middle, in the boonies, and doesn't get to see Takaru very often. And, you know, says like he'll visit him once he goes to Tokyo next time, which, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if that is going to be an event that happens in the series, like he's going to visit Tokyo and then be sucked in along with the other kids, or if it's like maybe he's sucked in now after the end of this episode, and then he ends up, you know, seeing Takaru, and who knows?
It's very interesting because we don't quite know yet how the mechanics of the world will work in this. Like,
Yeah.
is this going to be where the kids eventually do get stuck, or are they going to be able to exit in and out a la Adventure 2? Because if it is that case, the only way we've seen them exit is via a nuke going off and creating an EMP that launches everyone out. And I don't know if we could keep doing that 6 or 7 times per season. So, like, we're still at this point where I'm like, how will things work? Because if they all get stuck, then it makes a lot more sense. But if they're able to kind of go in and out, then that changes how the whole dynamic sort of will work for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I found most frustrating about the episode is that once I saw the title was to Enter the Digital World, I was like, okay, the thing I'm excited for about this episode is that we're gonna go to the digital world. We're gonna know kind of like what the new paradigm is. Like, are they going permanently or is it just like a temporary kind of thing? We're gonna like maybe even be introduced to the rest of the cast, and we're gonna get like a sense of what the new norm is. Like maybe these first three episodes are an introductory arc, and now we're gonna get into the norm of what the show is as an ensemble cast. And instead, by the time this episode ends, we're kind of still, all those things are questions, and we're still like, we don't know what the new normal is. Is there new normal?
Yeah.
So yeah, Taichi and Koshiro eventually go to camp. It seems like it's about a week later, because in the first episode there was a calendar that said it was July 26th, and we know it's the iconic August 1st or whatever, or at least some of the days at camp are August 1st. So they go to camp. I was kind of disappointed that this was like, I was prepping myself to be like, okay, once they go to camp, they're gonna get sucked in, and I guess the point was to subvert that and be like, nope, they just kind of go to camp and then go home, and nothing much happens there.
I know we got a question about it, and in my mind, I saw the question before I actually had seen the third episode, and I thought it was kind of interesting that the first episode brought up the idea of summer camp, which is where we know this event usually happened that brought them into the digital world, but then subverted. They went before that part, and you're like, oh, kind of a way to be like, hey, that's what this is, but we're different. We're not your daddy's Digimon, you know? We're different. And then they actually do go to camp, and you're like, that's kind of weird, but camp isn't where things happen. So that felt like this weird form of fan service almost, to be like, hey, they're at the camp, and then here's Joe and Sora for a hot second, and we're done. We're not actually, they're not doing anything else at this camp. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like especially, it just seems weird if it's like, if that's not the unifying thread that connects all these kids together, then it's like, then why is it even there? Like,
yeah, I mean, the whole purpose of the camp was to get it so we could have this Breakfast Club like cast of characters get sucked into the digital world, where the only thing that really connects them is proximity, and then eventually that they all saw a giant parrot fight a dinosaur at some point.
haven't we all though?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the kind of binds that connects us all. And not having that, I mean, you can still do it. I mean, there are series that do this sort of, into the digital world, out of it kind of thing before. One of them rhymes with Code Lyoko. I guess it just actually is Code Lyoko. I should have changed the word slightly. But you can still do it, that obviously this cast of characters with very distinctly different personalities would be bonded together over this, but that was like a great way to get them all in there. They all get trapped in this world and they're forced to survive together, and why would you feel the need to bring it up unless it's just there to be like a nostalgia trip for the audience, which again makes me think that this is aimed at the adult audience. But at that point, I don't know, it feels like we don't need to really subvert that. You could just be like, hey, they're going to go to summer camp. Oh no, everything happened before that. That's a subversion. And not come back later and be like, we did it again. We got you twice.
Yeah, like as a subversion this time, it was like, oh, so I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, now I'm just bummed.
I think it maybe what they're going for is that it's like, it's just there to be a tease of Sora and a tease of Joe.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I was about to riot if we got an episode without another episode without Joe, but he's in there and he's immediately Joe, where he's just like, "Stop chopping the vegetables like that! You're gonna ruin dinner! Ah, I cut my finger!" Like he's just this bumbling fool, and I'm like, classic Joe. And I sighed briefly and then nuzzled into sleep, ready to have a restful night of sleep.
One of the things that I really appreciate about Try actually, and its characterization of Joe, is that he struggles a lot with, because I guess at the age that they're in Try, he's at the end of high school. He's like a senior in high school, so he's like applying for university entrance exams. And like something I never really realized in the original series is that he's not that smart.
No,
He's really like career oriented and like anxious about everything, but like he's not Izzy. He's not smart about everything. So like he's just like in Try, he's just like in cram school and like struggling. He's like in the back row, which is like the lowest grade or whatever, and he's just like struggling to get by. And it's like, oh wow, this is so much more relatable than I thought.
it's what's like that old Simpsons Millhouse quote where he's like, "I'm not a nerd, Bart. Nerds are smart." You're like, "Oh right, that's Joe's exactly that."
Oh yeah, yeah. So they go to camp. They meet Sora. They come back from camp. That was camp. Great. And then the next night, basically things start to happen again. It seems kind of like what they're hinting at is that Algamon is still out there and is a giant black orb and spitting out an egg that is some kind of Digimon threat that starts causing power outages in Tokyo. And then basically Koshiro calls Taichi. They speculate about how the power outage is going to grow and will eventually, I don't know, affect everyone. That seems like random speculation, whatever. Whenever Koshiro or Izzy talks, it's just the voice of the writers, so I guess we have to believe it. But Then their Digivices start to glow, and Taichi runs to the station, leaves Hikari behind, runs past Sora, and then the only ones we see explicitly get sent to the digital world are Taichi and Koshiro. But we, I guess, see 4 other lights that kind of fly by, and it seems like they're in batches of 3. Like there's one group of 3 and one group of 3, but I don't know if that might mean that they're split into 2 different groups, or it could be nothing.
It definitely looked like when Tai runs past Sora, she turns and looks like she was following actors. So my thought was initially like, oh, she's going to get sucked into the world by proximity, or she's going to see it and then get sucked into it. And obviously, for the next season, next episode preview, we know she's very relevant to it. But it is kind of like a thing where I'm like, so do they all get sucked in, or is this just like a thematic kind of, these are the lights of the Digidestins going into the world? Like it's a very kind of mysterious thing right now.
Yeah, and like I don't know, like am I reading too much into the number 6? Like maybe 6 is the number that was pulled in. Maybe it's just not intentional. 6 is a weird number because I guess if I had to guess that it would be the main ones minus the 2 young, minus Takaru and Hikari, but it really could be. I mean, the only one we haven't seen on screen at all is Mimi. So like it could be like minus Hikari, minus Mimi or something, but that'd be cruel.
That'd be such a weird move to feel like Mimi's the only character who gets no introduction. She just shows up with the rest of the group, and you're like, oh, this is the character you really need to like warm us up a little bit for, because otherwise she's gonna come off like this Farouk Assault character no one's gonna like initially.
Well, I hope what they're doing with like holding back on her introduction is that they like know that she's such a fan favorite that like they're gonna make some explosive introduction with her, but that's not gonna work with a new audience. So
I mean, her Digimon is a giant cactus with boxing gloves. If any Digimon should show up out of nowhere just punching something to oblivion, it should be Togemon.
Oh yeah, Togemon, we miss you, Queen. Yeah, what did you think about the digital world that we see for like a whole 10 seconds?
It's interesting. I do like the effect of the water actually kind of looking like it's like these pixelated waves moving and not actually like liquid water. And it does have like a very distinct kind of visual look to it. I'll be curious to see how long we're actually staying there, because again, we don't really know what the situation here. Are they stuck here? Are they going to be coming in and out? You could do different things with it. I mean, one of the most iconic parts of the original series was the fact that like real world stuff was constantly littering this otherwise fantastical landscape. So I would like to hope they take some inspiration from that and really do some really crazy environments and things of that nature, and where like the water is just one glimpse of how we're going to see what a world of digital material would actually look like.
Yeah, that's something that I really appreciated, how like weird it was in the original series, having like a generic fantasy world littered with real world objects. But like aside from those random real world objects, it didn't feel digital basically at all.
No.
And so like that was something that I was like, okay, if there's one thing I hope they revise in this version, it's like make it actually feel digital in some way. And I'm already impressed by just that water effect. That maybe I'm getting my hopes up too soon, but like that seems like they're in the right direction in that regard. And definitely that first like wide shot of like, oh my god, this world's so impressive. It kind of reminded me of like the difference between like a standard RPG and like an open world MMO kind of world. It was like, this is vast, this is impressive, this is like on a scale we're not used to seeing before, and I hope they actually execute that well, because like it's one thing to show that in a 10-second shot. It's another thing to actually make that interesting as a setting for a show.
If we're going to spend time there, how much surface level? After the 9th time of seeing how the water moves, am I still going to be like, well, that's really interesting, you know?
Yeah. And one of the seasons you haven't really seen much Data Squad or Savers. That's like one thing I remember they did well about the digital world there, is that like water looks really digital. So this looks better. This looks more like impressive from a like Sakuga perspective, but like it's not that novel to have like a little bit of a digital artifact.
Yeah.
So I hope it trickles into other things as well. Isn't just Jurassic Park with water, digital water.
I mean, it does sound kind of cool, I guess, but
yeah, and it's like it makes sense to lean on the like Jurassic Park vibe, because like that is like, you know, like Agumon is the iconic Digimon. Like Digimon has always had like a dinosaur aesthetic, right? Like the original like V-Pets, at least that I remember, were like very dino themed with Tyrannomon and whatever. So like it makes sense to lean on those origins. And
you always get that comparison too, especially when like a new Pokemon generation comes out. People will look at a new Pokemon, they're like, that looks more like a Digimon than a Pokemon. And I'm generally like, does it have like a bunch of machine guns on it and is or a dinosaur / wolf? Because otherwise, I don't know what you mean. Digimon don't have that other like distinctive aesthetics outside of like, strap a bunch of guns to it, I guess.
Yeah, like is it a wolf that starts to stand up and gets pants? Like if not, then it's not a Digimon.
Come on now. Let's see a wolf that becomes bipedal, but then evolves further and then goes back down to 4 legs.
Well, like once it's just all the metal that was strapped onto him, he just couldn't stand up anymore.
Oh, he's not on all fours. He's just so heavy he has to crawl everywhere.
Yeah.
What a dark world for Metal Garurumon.
He's just burdened.
He's like, oh, I got so much stuff. I shouldn't have gotten so much stuff.
All right, let's get into some listener questions. First one came in from Dot Yawning and said, "You guys will almost certainly have discussed the topic by the time you get to the questions, but any theories as to how the next few episodes will play out, thanks to the way and the number of those colorful lights we saw en route to the digital world?" I'm saying it's too early to tell. Like, it could go in so many different directions, and I had hoped that we would see them all in one group by this episode, but it seems like that's probably not the case. The preview seemed to indicate that like they're probably split up. We only really saw we didn't see a big group shot, so
It would seem strange if we specifically see Izzy is getting sucked into the digital world with Tai, and the next episode is a Sora episode. Like, this character who has been like the tech guy behind the scenes, in the first instance he would get his own solo episode. They're like, no, you sit back, it's someone else's turn. So the idea that they're split up would make more sense. And in that way, I definitely understand why you'd want to lead with Sora, because she's one of the characters who kind of has the most leadership qualities to her. So I do like that idea. But as you said, it's really soon to tell. We really don't even know the mechanics of how this, like, are they all going to be stuck? Can they come in and out? Like, who knows at this point?
The next question from Andy Lucas TT. They asked, Matt staying with his grandma have any importance, you think? Especially with the theory that Matt's dad was an original chosen child with Daigo and Maki, since he recognized Gurumon Adventure. So, side note, Daigo and Maki are characters from Tri.
Okay.
They are basically like government agents that come in and like are like, oh, we need to like help you digidestined, and then it's later revealed they were the original group that is like mentioned very briefly in the original series. They were basically a set of 5 kids that went to the digital world and in fighting the Dark Masters, like had to sacrifice their Digimon to become the I forget what to call it, the celestial, like the 4 gods of the digital world. Their Digimon basically became that to defeat the Dark Masters, which is one of those ideas that sounds really cool in theory and like makes no sense in practice.
You're like, it was that tough to beat Puppetmon, really?
Yeah.
He's kind of a goober. I don't know if you've seen him.
There are other things that happen in Try that just like completely like overwrite that, and it's like never addressed again. Anyway, Try's a mess. This next question comes from Carito Prime, and he asked, "What do you think of Metal Greymon's quote unquote new design from the opening? And do you think they'll keep it in the series?" So did you see this tweet?
Yeah, the version that seems to indicate like the metal parts to him are actually like digitized kind of overlays almost. That there's not actually a physical mechanical element over him.
Yeah, I think that's so cool that I don't trust the series enough for that to actually be his look in the series. Like, I think that's just a temporary, like, while he's transitioning kind of thing.
It's definitely a unique visual, almost like this augmented reality kind of thing. It seems like that would be a really big pain to animate. So part of me is like, I don't know how much of a budget this series has, but at some point they were just like, yeah, he does that for the transformation sequence, and then it becomes metal because that's something we can draw easily and fluidly kind of move. But despite that, I actually really like the wings, how the wings are pixelated and distorted. I always did think it was weird that he just got like crappy wings essentially as Metal Greymon.
Yeah, it was just like crappy bat wings or something. Like,
you were like, did he ever fly? I don't remember him ever flying. Why does he have these crappy wings? And I kind of like the idea of like these digitized wings. I mean, he's still probably not going to fly, but that's just, I think, aesthetically a lot cooler. I do like green added to his character design as well. I think that's like a cool color palette right there. It's maybe a little busy, but I like it a lot.
Oh, way to rub that into the colorblind person's face. Wow,
I'm sorry. It's garbage. It's nothing. There's nothing there worth noting. It's all terrible.
He looks really good with that red everywhere. What were your final thoughts on this episode?
I do like it. I've kind of noted that I'm like of 2 minds for a lot of this show, and a lot of it is I want to be patient. I don't want to make too many snap judgments because this is episode 3 of, I don't know generally how long these seasons tend to go.
I mean, we have no clue really. Like, I was worried after the first episode that this is going to be like, once the first episode seemed like it was like so lavishly animated and episode 2 was titled War Game, I was like, oh no, are they just doing greatest hits? Is this going to be 12 episodes of like the best moments from Digimon? I think now it's clear it's definitely not that, but like it could be 26 episodes, 24, whatever. It could be a whole 50 episode season, and we have no idea.
So I generally want to try to be patient, because I think that's a very important virtue to understand when you're consuming media of any kind, is to kind of be patient and see if you're still enjoying it to any extent. Keep following along. Your concerns might get resolved as it goes along.
Or like your experience with World Trigger, you keep suffering through it even when you hate it.
Yeah, and then eventually it's the most amazing thing, and I'm going to keep reading Black Clover. Any day now, it's going to turn that corner, and I'm like, this is great. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to dunk on Black Clover. It's pretty good. I think that this was a good episode. I do like how things wrapped up. I do like that we're getting a lot of push forward into things. I love that we got to see Joe. And we got this cool new introduction for Sora. And I do kind of like how they even are like, oh, even I know who Sora is. Everyone thinks she's the coolest girl around. She's amazing. And I was like, yeah, it seems like a pretty fitting way to describe Sora. Like, yeah, let's build up this cool character. There's a little much of the where is this mystery going, and obviously the stuff with the nuke that's kind of like this is a little bombastic and huge for me. But again, this ain't your daddy's Digimon, so we're gonna see, I guess, where all this is going.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. Like, it's a lot of people's reactions have been like, like basically thinking that like everything we've seen is the entirety of what's gonna. I don't know. It's just like I think it's a lot of these things are too soon to tell, and really the only reaction I feel like that is really fair at this point is like, are you interested enough to keep watching? Because if you're not interested enough to keep watching, then like, okay, yeah, it's totally fair to stop watching. But like, we can't guess at this point how things are going to turn out. Like every guess I've had has been wrong, which is exciting for me. Like I want that. I want to be confused and thrown off my game.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I'm generally one of those people that I try to avoid spoilers for things and things like that because when I'm actively enjoying something, I don't try to guess how it's going to end necessarily. I may have like thoughts and
Yeah.
things like that, but I know some people who will watch something and be like, obviously that person's going to die. I read it from all these things, or that's the way this would go. And like, I don't know, when I'm watching something, my brain turns off most of that stuff. And I only really start to think about it like afterwards, where I'm not trying to think too hard on these things. I just want to kind of enjoy it as I'm going along.
Yeah, like I think if you know everything that's going into it, then like what's the fun of like it's always if you think of some amazing cool theory for how it's going to turn out, it's either going to happen as is or it's going to be less interesting than what you thought of, and you're going to be disappointed. So like I don't know what the point is.
Like I was watching when I watched Parasite, I was watching it with a couple other people.
No, wait, we're on an anime podcast, so you have to clarify. Parasite with a Y or with an I?
Parasite, the movie,
Okay.
the winner of Best Picture at the most recent Academy Awards, at Parasite. Because I forgot how the director's name is pronounced, and I didn't want to butcher it. I'm like,
Yeah,
Bong. No, you know, we're gonna abandon it. We're gonna hit that eject button. But as I was watching it, I was watching with some other people, and they were analyzing a lot of stuff. They're like, "Well, the movie's called Parasite. Obviously, it's picking up these themes. These are the things that are going to happen." And I was like, I just don't think that as I'm watching it. I'm like, I'm just gonna watch it and digest the movie, and then afterwards is where I'll start analyzing and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach because like it's definitely worth analyzing, but like not before you've even seen the roller coaster. Like the
Yeah,
ride is part of the fun.
like I don't want to, after this episode's done, I know you mentioned like I can go out there and read chapter titles for the next couple episodes and theory craft on that, and that's just not how I want to digest the series, because then I'm going to go into the next episode with a preconceived idea of what the episode after that's going to be like, and that's going to, then I'm kind of waiting for things to happen to get to that episode. Like I just that's not the way I tend to enjoy stuff.
Yeah, like I feel like I've already been burned by just like the most basic information, like the next episode title. Like I would have enjoyed this episode. This is kind of my final impression on it. Like I feel like it felt very thin and like I was just waiting for stuff to happen. But like really that was because my expectation was completely set by the title of the episode being Enter the Digital World. Like I just kept waiting for that to happen. And so like when
Yeah.
it didn't happen until the last couple seconds, I was like, that's it? That's all that happened? And I
Mhm.
kind of just like when I look back on it, there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about the interim before we got to that point, but it felt like treading water. It felt like filler. Like that's a loaded term. I'm talking about anime, but like it felt like material that I wasn't interested in, even
Yeah.
though if I just hadn't had that expectation, I would have been interested in it. So it's like I kind of wish I didn't know the title before going to this episode.
It's very real. It's very interesting you say that, because I didn't know what the episode title was. I know you've probably like sent me material that didn't mention it, but my mind was just like, that's not pertinent information for me. So I dislodged it completely. And as soon as I loaded up Crunchyroll, I just full screened the video player, and I didn't even notice the name. And I do think you're right. It's almost kind of like watching an HBO show and the previously on things comes on, you're like, nope, I'm skipping right past this. This is absolutely coloring the way I'm going to watch this episode going forward. Where if you digest anything about the episode that's not just directly the episode itself, do you completely change your expectations for it? Is that a detriment to the way you digest and enjoy? Is that the creator's design and intent? Like, I know, it's interesting.
So this is the point where I ask you to rate the episode out of 5 stars.
I'm not gonna be one of those people that gives halves. That's a cheating way to do it. It's bad. I'm gonna give this a 4.
Hmm.
I'm being more optimistic than I should, because I do have issues with it, but I think a lot of those issues are contingent upon the fact that we don't know enough about the series quite yet. And the stuff that I did like, I actually liked quite a lot. I did like a lot of the writing and the jokes. I liked a lot of the art style to it. It was a pretty cool fight scene that happened, so I do like that part of it. It is a very like I don't even remember Omnimon using the cloak nearly as much as he did in the original movie. So I kind of like that design aesthetic that he uses this cloak to kind of wrap himself up a lot. And it was very silly, but I've been hosting a podcast about shonen battle manga for a decade now, so that's kind of my wheelhouse. I kind of like a lot of this stuff deep down, so I'm gonna give it an optimistic 4. Maybe that's not entirely representative of the quality of the episode, but I think separated from everything else, that's what I'm most comfortable.
So I'm gonna be half star trash, and
Oh my goodness, this is ridiculous.
I only hedge. So
Your Twitter account doesn't let us do half stars, but you can. That's some elitism right there.
it's true. I have the power. So yeah, what Chris is alluding to there, we have a Twitter post poll where you can go and rate it out of 5 stars. We'll also on the site have a little widget where you can rate it, empathitches.com. So send in what you thought of it as, please. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. Like I kind of think of it as like 3 as my like baseline. Like this feels kind of average, and this was like a little bit better than last episode, which I gave 3, but not quite as like it had enough things that frustrated me,
Yeah.
and maybe that's just colored by how I went into it, but that's how I feel at this point. And even when I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, there's stuff in the episode that I appreciated, it's not that interesting. Like when I'm listed out, I was like, these events are kind of just Taichi and Koshiro talk some more and speculate some more. Okay. So yeah, I'm kind of like, it's like middle of the road with like a little bit of a, like my thumb's like leaning up towards a thumbs up just a tiny bit.
Yeah, I think if I were to be a half star scum like yourself, I probably would go 3.5 as well. But yeah, that feels about right.
So do you want to speculate on the next episode, or do you not care about that kind of stuff?
No, I mean, I can speculate enough that it's going to be a Sora focused episode based off the title, Bergermon Flies. That would be really weird if she wasn't involved at all. They're like, nope, it's a Joe episode. He's getting around. I think I'm going to be really excited. I really want to see their characterization of Sora a lot more. They kind of established that the world sees her as this very cool character, but for someone whose crest is love, a very important question is how does she feel about herself? And I think I'm really kind of excited to see how this show is going to tackle the crests going forward. We do see that they do seem to be relevant to the character still. Ty's glows when he decides to charge into battle to save his family. So I presume the virtues that are attached to them are still a very relevant key part. And this is a place where we could start laying some groundwork. I mean, you don't have to do a ton of work on the main character. They're going to get the most screen time, but a prevalent side character like Sora, this is the kind of spotlight episode to see how they're going to start handling the side cast more and more.
I guess it will be like the first episode that really, it seems like possibly, I don't want to get too locked into my expectations based on the title again, but it seems like this is going to be the first episode that really is like a side character focused episode.
Yeah.
Like the typical Digimon formula, like that would have, episode 2 would have been about Yamato or Matt, but like didn't really feel like that. So we'll see how it plays out this time. I think from the preview, we kind of saw some like iconic moments. Like we saw Biyomon hugging Sora, and that was like a big pain point in the original series that Biyomon is very open about showing affection towards her, and she is not keyed into that yet and is very off put by it. So that could be a thing again, or she could have totally different issues.
Yeah.
Taichi and Agumon seem like they're on a raft at some point, which is like how episode 2 starts off in the original series, I believe. And they're like running away from Kuwagumon, like fall into the water. Or actually, no. I think it's like Goemon summons some fishes or something.
Are you talking about marching fishes?
Yeah, such a practical move, such a good attack. So last thing I wanted to ask you is like if I hadn't invited you on the show and you were just like heard about this new series, first of all, would you have watched it right away like you did now, or and also like would you keep watching it?
Almost certainly not. I've kind of been on the record before that a lot of my ability to digest the anime and manga that I do is kind of contingent on the fact that I do a weekly show on it. That if there wasn't Weekly Manga Recap, I don't know if I would still be reading manga. And I mean that as a good way. It's kind of a way to keep touch with a friend that otherwise I probably would have lost track of over the years. And not specifically Nick, I mean manga in general. I do think that I'm very glad that because of this show, I've checked this out. I do think I would catch more of it going forward. It's sometimes tough because I'm somebody who multitasks a lot. I like to run dailies in games and things like that while I watch television and paint a lot. And it's easier when I can just listen to something when I don't have to put my focused attention on the screen to read
Mm.
subtitles. So it's a bit harder for me to do that with anime, but I still try to do it when I can. And I think this is definitely something. I don't know if I'd follow it week to week, but I think it's definitely going to be followed, maybe just in chunks.
Yeah, I feel like given what we've seen so far, like might be the kind of thing that isn't worth getting hyped about every single week, but like in chunks could be more fun.
Yeah, I don't follow. I'm not as like closely intertwined with the larger Digimon community, where maybe this is a more hyped up event, where this new series happened. As I said, I just didn't watch Try, so part of my experience is kind of colored by that. Where some people might be a little bit more pessimistic or optimistic because of their experience with Try. I just don't have any. I just haven't really digested new Digimon in basically about a decade now. So for me, it's a level of like, this is a cool nostalgic thing to kind of get back into, but I don't have these big expectations for what this show has to be, essentially.
I'm curious, did like before I asked you about this, did actually I can't remember when I did. Maybe the show had barely just started. But did you feel like this was being talked about more than Try? Like was it more on your radar than Try was?
No, I remember Try being a lot more talked about, but I think a lot of that was you because I follow you on
Hmm.
Twitter, and I feel like from you I got a lot more information about Try. But I'm also not like I don't have my thumb on the pulse of the larger anime community. If it's not like
Hmm.
a jump manga or something like that we generally read, I don't have as much of like a knowledge of like the wider community of shows and things that are coming out. So in that way, I think I heard more about Try, but I might just have been following more anime related people at that time and hearing people talk about it than specifically now.
Because I think like basically everyone that I've talked to that is like in your position of being which is basically my position of like being a casual Digimon fan, but without running a podcast about Digimon, they basically like checked out Try and maybe got through like one or two movies and then like just were like, "Ugh, it's not worth it anymore." Like so I'm hoping this series like keeps people's attention more and like it's already gotten like there are like Polygon articles and like IO9 articles written about, oh my god, is a Megamon too soon? Oh my god. So like it seems like it's more controversial and like getting people to talk about it more. And I'm hoping that doesn't just like fizzle out after episode 4 or something. So before we close out the show, do you have any media that's not Digimon that you want to plug or recommend to people?
Well, there's this little known documentary called Tiger King I want to talk about. No, I want to talk about good documentaries. So,
Hmm.
I love documentaries. My favorite kind are the weird and crazy, the stuff that follows stuff that is like this sort of weird part of culture or is just a crazy rabbit hole. Those are like my favorites. So I want to recommend this is something you can check out also on Netflix. It's called Bathtubs Over Broadway. It's about one of the writers of the David Letterman show is sort of the main person followed in this as he has this sort of passion for these vinyl copies of things that were made in like the 50s or 60s called industrial musicals, which were where companies would gather together like a bunch of people for a big conference and they would host musicals about their products. So it would be like a whole musical about Nabisco cookies or a whole musical about bathroom fixtures, which is the title of the thing. And it's insane and it's crazy. It's really interesting, and my favorite part is that it is so unabashedly passionate for this weird part of culture that existed only briefly, that kind of came and went, and then kind of really puts a focus on the various performers that existed in this world. And I don't want to spoil anything that happens in it, but it has a legitimately such a charming way of showcasing this passion and at the end having this great kind of wrap up to everything. It's really just like a short but really enjoyable treat that if you're into kind of weird documentaries, weird looks at like subcultures, it's a great little experience.
That sounds pretty cool. And I'm interested to watch a documentary that's not trash after Tiger King.
You don't want to watch one that's super exploitive and definitely not telling you the truth.
Oh, and it's just has a Talking Dead style reunion show where it's just like, hey, abuse victim, how much did you binge the show? Like, oh boy, boy, that
Yeah.
was a lot. Anyway, I'm going to recommend, since Chris is a fellow gotcha game fan slash
Me.
trash garbage, we all have bad taste.
I blame you, even though I was playing these games before then, but I didn't know the terms, and now I do, and I blame you.
So I'm going to recommend Arknights, which is at this point my favorite gotcha
Oh,
game.
it's so good.
It's basically the gameplay is tower defense, and I usually don't really like find the gameplay itself of gotcha games that appealing. And this is one where I'm actually really like the gameplay, and it actually like makes me think about things since it's like a tower defense kind of tactical setup, it's similar to Fire Emblem Heroes, which I felt like for the first couple of weeks engaged my mind and made me feel like, oh, I have to actually do different things. But eventually Fire Emblem Heroes was just like, okay, you need to have this specific build of this character, and like you need to have this specific stat, and like even if you roll this amazing character, they have to have this innate bonus. So you need to like actually roll them like 10 times to get the best one or whatever. And it was like, ugh, this is just not fun anymore. And it was like, you need to get the perfect, like basically do the perfect set of moves on this map to win it. Arknights feels a lot more, there's so many different things you can do that it's like there's always some other strategy you can try. Like every unit acts in such different ways. Like there are characters that have like AoE effects, and there's one, I know it's a character that you like too, Chris, called Ifrit, who just like, instead of having like, normally they have like an AoE attack that's like a range of like 9 tiles in a square, but Ifrit is just like a single line. So it's just like this weird, bizarre form of attack that like doesn't work on most maps. But if you do like find some way to get her to be effective, she's just great. And so it lets you like play with weird strategy, and it just feels engaging in the long term too. Like you have to like choose your resources really well, because you can't upgrade everyone. So you have to like invest in your favorites.
Well, you tried to, it sounds like.
Well, I tried to get everyone to like the second level, like the first upgrade. And then I look now and see that everyone else has like upgraded their like 6 favorites to the second level. And I'm like, how'd you do that? Oh, wait, because I wasted all my resources getting everyone to the first level. Oh, I made a mistake.
Oh, what have I done? It's interesting because you describe it to as a tower defense, and I agree. It's not exactly, because I feel like when you say tower defense, it brings to light all of those really bad, cheap mobile games early on,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just a DPS race. And I think, imagine combining a tower defense game with almost kind of a puzzle strategy game, where a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times you're just trying to find the right pieces to put in the right places to help you succeed. There's a lot more strategy to this game than there is necessarily number crunching to be like, all right, do I have enough DPS to survive this gigantic wave, or do I have to pay 99 cents for a big bomb upgrade or something like that? Like, it's nothing like that. It is one of the more free to play games, not because it's overly generous. Like one game I'll maybe not mention right here, Dragalia Lost, cough cough. It's not specifically generous, but you don't need high tier units to do content. You can, like, there's an entire YouTube community dedicated to trying to run through as many maps as possible with garbage tier, like freebie characters essentially. And they're all kind of positioned in a way they're like, hey, if you did get a better unit than this one, just replace it. It'll make things easier, almost certainly. So I really enjoy that there's so much strategy that can be had in a game that doesn't force me to be competitive with other people.
Yeah, I've been playing tower defense games since like I think the genre was basically birthed in Warcraft 3 mods, and I've always loved the gameplay. And what I like about usually a tower defense game, it's like every match you play is like a clean slate, and so it's kind of like its own little isolated puzzle. And what I appreciate about Arknights, which maybe sounds like a bad thing, but like since your units carry over and like you upgrade them and invest in them over time, it's like if you're really struggling with a map, then it's like, okay, like spend some more time like investing in your units, and then eventually you'll be able to clear. And so it's like, instead of like trying to optimize your playthrough, like you can try to optimize your playthrough of the map, but you can also have other ways to help you improve and help you get past it eventually. So it's like there's some content that's like, oh my god, I have no chance of beating this, but then you know, like, okay, if I like eventually I'll get to it.
I had that. There's a mode in the game called Annihilation. Annihilation 2 map was so tough for me, and now I'm almost considering going back and playing through it with my new cast of characters to see how easy it'll be, because now I have a bunch of new characters who can occupy new roles that I didn't have access to before, and can handle maybe multiple things at once that I didn't have in my first run through. And it's fun to kind of go back and try these alternate challenges, and some are even provided in the game where it's like, hey, do this map, but do it without any sniper units. And you're like, well, this is a map where you kind of need snipers. To like, well, figure it out, buddy. And that's kind of enjoyable. I like the challenge of being like, all right, how do I do this without snipers? Or how do I do this if all of my deploy points are slowed by 3 times or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I love when it's like, what are they called? Casters cost triple, and it's like, you can't trick me. I'm still gonna use it for it. It's gonna cost like 100 DP, but like I'm still gonna do it.
I appreciate your effort, but I will save up. I will run 7 Vanguards so I can get enough DP so I can drop effort. You can't stop me.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Great game.
If you like this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. You can follow Podages on Twitter or Tumblr if you want gifts, ship posts, and fan art, and share the podcast with your friends who will catch your laptop on your trip, even if they're the coolest girl that all the girls in 4th grade talk about. You can find me at Jeff on Twitter, and also check out the other podcast I do called Love It a Wee Bit, where we watch new anime of the currently airing season. This season is really exciting, but also everything might be canceled soon. So, ooh, it's a mess, but there's lots of exciting shows airing. So we're still probably going to talk about most of them. Thank you, Chris, for coming on. This has been really fun.
No, thank you for having me. I'm very happy that you asked me to be a guest. This was a great experience.
And so if people want to find you on the internet, find your work, where can they listen to you some more?
You can find me on Twitter at Rollot, Rollot. You could find the manga podcast we do at weeklymangarecap.podbean.com or check it out on iTunes, Weekly Manga Recap. And if you want to check out Dice Funk, a very gay, very fun, very ridiculous podcast about D&D where we basically throw out all the rules to tell cool stories. You can find that if you type Dice Funk into basically anything with a search function. It'll come up, essentially. Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify.
You can't say iTunes. Don't say iTunes. They'll attack us. Oh, no.
Oh, no.
It's Apple Podcasts. Oh, no.
Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean, anywhere. Basically, if you type Dice Funk into a search bar, Pornhub, type Dice Funk into it, I think one episode will probably come up.
On that note, don't search Prodigies on Pornhub. We don't endorse that. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
And remember, never stop Digimon.
虹を見つけたいなら顔を上げなくちゃって差し出された手が僕らをずっと強くする夢を掴みたいなら震えその一歩前に踏み出してごらんよ今ならきっと空を飛べるから
It's okay. We talk about mostly nonsense on there. Here, we're going to have a much more thorough discussion. This is a podcast about gacha games, right? That's what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We're just talking about Arknights 24/7.
We're going to talk about our Arknights pulls recently. I didn't get Helliger. Sad.
Yeah. I don't know whether to invest that much. He's the new one that like doesn't heal or something. It can't be healed by other units.
Yeah, but he heals himself super quickly.
I already have 2 6-star guards, so I'm like, should I invest more? I don't know.
I have Chen and Scotty, and I was kind of like, I was like, well, let's not fully invest here, because how many maps am I really going to run 3 different guards in, you know?
Yeah.
But, oh, wait, we actually did just turn this into an Arknights podcast.
What are you talking about? I mean, Scotty's a Digimon. Also, it sounds like we're just saying Scotty, like Scott.
Like Scotty, like Scotty from Star Trek. That was a character, right? He was the beam me up guy, right? Yeah.
Sure. Star Trek's a show, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Space? Star Wars? Oh.
Mm-hmm. And I believe at one episode they got sucked into a digital world. Boop, we've looped back to Digimon.
Digimon, what's that?
Oh, I don't know. I think that was the Pokemon game, but there was the eyeball with the big tongue that like jumped around.
Oh yeah, well, like you put in like a floppy drive into the PS1 and then it like read it into data or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, guess Digimon recently had a somewhat reboot a couple years ago with Atmon, and Atmon had its own. Pretty sure it had a full card game and everything, and it, like I just don't think did well enough to go anywhere.
Yeah,
so.
Like every Digimon gotcha game that's been out there, you're like, this is okay, I guess. I love these characters, but I'm gone, guys. Thanks for the time, though.
Yeah, like that's kind of how I feel about most Digimon games. It's like they're never that good as a game without nostalgia for Digimon. So it's like, how much do I? It's like trading. How much do I care about Digimon enough to play a subpar game? And that's always a calculation to make.
You know what? Some days it goes better than others. I'll say that. We're in kind of a dry spot for gacha games for me, so I've been playing a lot of Bleach Immortal Souls, and I'm like, this is not a good game. This just isn't a good game. But I'm going to play it because it's pretty easy. It's pretty quick and easy to play. So, and I got some Bleach nostalgia out of it.
Did you play the 7 Deadly Sins one? Because I've heard a lot of people talking about it.
I did. I stopped it though. The rates on it are terrible. I did so many 10 pulls and never got a character I wanted. Oof. And it's a lot of grinding. Now, presentation and quality wise, it's probably one of the finest polished games out there. But it's also one of those games that doesn't do like skip tickets. So if you need to run something like 5 times, you need to run it 5 times. And it'll auto run it. But that's to the point where I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to leave my phone off to the side for 35 minutes while I run these missions. And it's just like, it's not really the kind of gameplay I super like to do. And there's a heavy focus on PvP, which if that's not your jam, then it's not going to be your jam.
Like, I think I have room for Arknights being the one game that's like kind of sits in the background. And well, I guess Grand Blue Fantasy, but that's just always there.
That's just an omnipresent thing in your life. I assume you have a monitor that's devoted entirely to Grand Blue Fantasy playing at all times.
Oh, I wish. I had to get a new iPad just so I could use like split screen, so I could play it while editing.
I admire your dedication to this.
And one little detail here that I kind of flew by in the last episode and was also flew by a little bit in this episode is that they're not actually in Tokyo anymore, which I find disappointing. They're in like the next town over, which I'm forgetting the name of now, but
The Staten Island, essentially.
yeah, they're in New Jersey.
Okay.
No, but they're in like a smaller city between Tokyo and Yokohama, so it's like they're like accessible within range of Tokyo, but like they're not technically Tokyo. Which, as someone who visited iconic locations of Digimon, I'm disappointed about. But whatever,
well,
it doesn't really matter.
You have new ones to visit now.
Yeah, like the random suburbs in this minor city. Great.
You take a couple pictures there. Someone's just like, get out of here, you nerd. Like, oh.
Yeah, that's actually one, like, from the events of the original series, a lot of people go to, like, the most iconic stuff is where the show actually takes place in Odaiba with, like, the Fuji TV building and, like, all the different scenes from the show. But the other location that's totally separate is Hikariga or Haiju Terrace in the dub, which is just, like, where the events of the original movie take place, where they like saw Greymon and Paramon. But like in real life, it's just a random suburb, and like that was the line that I didn't cross. I was like, I'm not just going to go to this random suburb and just look at apartment buildings that are just any other apartment building. Like,
I've always been tempted to go on the Wire tour of Baltimore, where they take you through pubs. But I was like, I don't want to get separated from that tour because every other location in Baltimore did not look great, and I don't really remember that many bars in The Wire that I'm really interested in the pub crawl part of this.
Yeah, The Wire is definitely not a show I watch and think, I want to live that.
Yeah, it's not a show where I'm like, I can't wait to hang out with all of my favorite characters like Ziggy and Bubbles. Like, unless this is season 5 Bubbles, in which case he deserves our love. But hey, until then, it's a rough neighborhood. Can I just I'm terrible at tangents and I want to apologize. Can I just note my favorite thing? Because I was thinking of the Dark Masters and I was thinking of Metal Seedramon, and I want to note that my favorite thing in all of Digimon, especially the dub, is their weird idea that well, the kids won't get this, but let's have a lot of the random Digimon have voices relevant to old celebrities that their parents would know, or just weird like gimmick voices, essentially. I always forget, like, Metal Seedramon, this imposing figure of the oceans of the world. He's just like, yo, bro, take my laser blast. And I just recently, like, my all-time favorite, the one I always quote, is Cherrymon, for some reason being Marlon Brando. I just watched Apocalypse Now recently, and it's so funny to me that the way Cherrymon dies is to quote the "Oh, the horror" line, which is such a different context in that movie. And it's just him like, "Oh, the horror being killed by Puppetmon." You're like, I really wish I was like an adult with a kid at that point, so I could have the experience of like, this was obviously a joke for me, but I don't know if I like it.
Yeah, it feels like they, like, while working on those episodes, were just like so bored by the material they had to make it spice it up in some way. Just
like, I watched Frontier, and I remember like when they fight, like, I think it's Ice Devimon, they were like, this character's kind of boring. What if we give him a Christopher Walken impersonation? Like, okay, like how are we gonna make this monkey character interesting after Devimon? Like, what if he's Elvis? Like, okay, the kids won't get this, but
that one at least felt like thematically appropriate. Like, he has a microphone, you know, like he's a performer.
Oh,
but like Metal Seedramon, it's like, so he's in the water, so he's a surfer.
He's just a big surfer dude.
And Cherrymon's just like, okay, that was just a random one you pulled out of your hat. You know,
it's brilliant in its insanity, and I love it.
I guess the one saving grace is that we didn't get like a Donald Trump impression, because then Digimon would forever be tarnished.
Oh yeah.
I guess it kind of, Digimon was kind of like was fading away before like The Apprentice started airing, so it missed that wave.
And I feel like it was too pop culturally relevant. Like, I guess Christopher Walken was to a certain extent, but the idea that you would throw a Marlon Brando impersonation actor who I believe was already dead by that point and who was famous for movies mostly done like 20 to 30 years ago. It's like, you're not doing this for kids. Like, I'm sure there was a character who was a John Wayne impersonation too. I'm sure there was one in there. And you're like, the kids aren't going to get this. It's not like you did a Jim Carrey impersonation or an Adam Sandler. They have no idea who these people you're referencing are.
Yeah, it really was a gem.
It's a treasure. I love it. I say this in all honesty. I love every moment of it. I'll dunk on it, but it's truly one of the treasures I keep with me in my heart at all times.
Like, I don't think it wasn't intentionally a treasure, you know, like it just.
No, I will dunk on it, but I legitimately, it's one of my, when I was watching Apocalypse Now, I was thinking of Cherrymon and Digimon, which is not the way that scenario should go. It should definitely be the other way around, but I was definitely like, oh man, that makes that line so much better now.
Well, you know, Digimon was the original work, and Apocalypse Now is just referencing it.
Yeah. We could just retroactively change that.
We can edit Wikipedia, right? You know?
Yeah, I think I still have access to my account.
Yeah, I was banned from Wikipedia for editing Digimon references into popular works of fiction too much.
A lot of information seems to only be prevalent to characters when they need to know it, like how Matt seems to have some idea that Digimon could potentially like unite together, or I don't know if his implication that they might change the way they are forever might just be that they were going to run in really close and bite something. So
Yeah, I think that was just like, I have this really risky strategy. What if you like attack from close up this time?
what if you bite it? Like, all right, this is the crazy new strategy. I forget. There's a way Izzy describes it too that's hysterical, where he's like, they're introducing up close combat protocols or something like that. Like, it's such an overcomplicated way to explain. They just bit the crap out of that character. Like, you could just say that. No one needs to know.
That moment had such a missed potential because it wasn't just that they were biting; it was like they were biting it and then like firing their normal attack
Yeah.
while biting it. And it's like it's basically like a suicide bombing technique, and it's like it makes a lot of sense. It fits in with what Matt was saying of like, oh, this is really risky. It's a double-edged sword. But like in practice, it was like it just felt like, oh, they bit and then did the normal attack, and it was like we don't get the weight of it. Like the series both is like over explaining things and throwing info dumps at us, but then not explaining moments like that to make them feel like they're a big deal. Instead, it was just like, oh, they bit and attacked. Okay, yeah, it's just a JRPG boss battle. Like it's never over.
Yeah, we got to fight Ansem level 4, and he's back to being a spaceship again. You have Goofy this time though, so it's a lot better this time.
Oh, that spaceship form.
In my life, I will never be able to express the amount of relief in my life that after I beat that one form and you go into the darkness and you just hear Goofy like, Sora! I'm like, oh, thank God Goofy's here with me again. Oh, I'm so close to dying constantly. I need you here to throw potions at me, my dude.
I cannot relate. I never stopped finding Donald and Goofy annoying as hell.
I love them. They're my precious. They're my best friends. I cried when it looked like Goofy was going to die, and then Kingdom Hearts 3 happened, and I have no more comments.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3 was a game. There's my comment.
It was absolutely there.
Didn't Donald use Zeta Flare? Cool.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I'm super excited about it.
Back to Digimon, going from Kairi to Kari.
In my mind, I'm like, so are those Digimon? Like, do they just not have names, or are there real fish in this world? Does he have the ability to mind control other living Digimon, or are these like sub-programs essentially with no real consciousness? These are the important ethical questions I ask. I asked the same thing in an early episode of Pokemon where they go to Misty's gym, and there are regular fish swimming in the aquariums. I'm like, so are there non-regular Pokemon in the world, like regular just animals, or are these like lame Pokemon that no one bothers catching?
I mean, there has to be some regular animals because like there are carnivores, right? And they can't eat other Pokemon, right?
Yeah, and when I catch a Caterpie and it's like that's a caterpillar Pokemon, then like my question would be like, what the heck is a caterpillar? Like at that point, if they don't exist. But they never are relevant to this point. So I don't know. Like you kind of just want to see the one dude who's like, yeah, I have a pet dog. It's not a dog Pokemon. It's just a dog. It doesn't like have special moves or anything. Not to bring it down to this, but content is certainly going to be a lot more trickle down going forward in pretty much every medium for a while. Like I'm thinking like now, I was like, you might want to find some Netflix shows to like save if you really want to, because 6 months down the line, I guarantee there's not going to be as much new stuff coming out. So in that way, even if this isn't something you want to check out now, I would say it's still something to keep on like your back burner to check out, because you might not have a ton of other options, or there might not be as much competition at least.
Yeah, there'll be no more content. Content's gone.
Yep, it's all gone. We're just a Tiger King world now.
No. Yeah, just like Leomon, he went to jail. If you like this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Oh my God, wherever else you listen to podcasts?
I was like, the question mark at the end's interesting. I'm Ron Burgundy.
It's like it sounded like my voice cracked, even though it didn't. You know, just add that artificial voice cracking just to make things sound like I have no confidence in what I'm saying.
You're such a Joe.